Hey there, everybody. I'm Afefe with Touch by Tarot and Beyond. So glad that you're on my channel. If you landed here for the first time, I hope you like what you see. And if so, hit that like and subscribe button. For my subscribers, I thank you so very much. This gives me, a thrill when I see you on here leaving your comments. Again, we are building community in this space on this platform. We stay informed, we exchange information, we get guidance from spirit about many things that are going on around us. I will be doing a full moon reading. We got two back-to-back full moons in Capricorn coming up, you all. So that's another thing. This is going to be a political video today, but I'll get on here this week in time to talk about that as well, what we can expect in our our personal lives. And the personal is political, the political is personal these days, right? So coming in today on the political end, especially after an eventful weekend, we had a lot going on in the fundraising area. We had Trump in Detroit. I'm going to go in on that in a moment. Talk about a shell game. What a shell game this man is performing these days. We know, especially as it relates to reaching out more to black voters at the same time that he's, you know, huddled up with the most rabid MAGA followers that we can imagine. So he's really mixing up that pot, but it's interesting the way that he's going about it. Want to take a look at that. What else? Leading today, I understand that today, Monday, we are supposed to hear news that Governor Wes Moore out of Maryland, who James Clyburn has said, revered leader, in Congress, etc., or Senate, I should say, that he's talking about people like Wes Moore being that next wave, along with folks like Hakeem Jeffries, Cory Booker, Jasmine Crockett out of Texas, right? Keeping our eye on her with herself. Super smart, super fiery, just really excited for her future. But anyway, so Governor Wes Moore is supposed to announce 175,000 pardons for people who have convictions for marijuana, right? And the idea is by giving these pardons, it wipes their record clean so that they can get jobs. They can, they can qualify for certain loans, business loans, things like that right now, as long as that's a part of their record, it disqualifies them. So he's making quite an interesting move there with this pardon. But I want to go to Spirit and ask, is that going to be a part of a growing trend? We know that Maryland is solidly Democratic. I don't think we have any issues around how those electoral votes are going to go in the election in November. But still, the idea that someone who is being pegged as, one to watch with a bright political future, Wes Moore, we've watched how he handled that whole situation in the Baltimore Harbor with that ship. And that bridge collapse, that was unbelievable. But he stood up to that. He was quite forthcoming. He's handled it very well. So I think Jim Clyburn is right. I think he's got quite a future ahead of him. I want to take a look at that. And finally, I ran across a really interesting article, you all, if you can, might want to check it out. It's in the New York Times, and it's an article on the partisan divide. And there are organizations, this one is in particular, it's called the Kentucky Rural Urban Exchange. It's and it's growing, not just Kentucky, but it's places around the country where they are starting to deliberately, unify and bring groups together, both from the rural communities and urban communities, to exchange ideas. And what they're doing, while it is ultimately a political endeavor, what they're saying is by bringing people together just to talk about what's in common, what their values are, what's happening, different issues in that we face as a society that apply to all people, no matter what your political affiliation, that in and of itself is starting to become part of a political movement, because it humanizes one another instead of constantly, they're saying part of their effort, this rural urban exchange these groups are saying part of their effort is to offer a counterpoint to what a lot of us are getting just by getting our news either streaming online, YouTube, the major networks, CNN, MSNBC, blah blah blah. That it's offering an alternative to that, because we have heard, and I, as a former journalist, I am critical of this, that the coverage, a lot of the coverage that we're getting is dictated by who's the loudest squeaky wheel, right? Instead of more progressive investigative coverage like this, where there are exchanges that are being had and how that can parlay into the political realm. So I want to take a look at that, see if what Spirit says, if that in fact is going to be a growing movement in the coming months. All right, let's go in. I want to start out quickly. You all probably saw, we got to be really careful about these deep fake, or what they're calling now cheap fake, because it was a cheap shot. These clips that are going to be coming out, and have come out. So we saw, while President Biden has been at this G7 summit, there was someone who had parachuted. There were these parachuters. Joe Biden turned around, so the rest of the G7 leaders were kind of over here. He turned around near where this one parachute person was putting up their stuff, and he was just having a human exchange. Well, the fact that his back was turned to the rest of the group, many of you saw this, and then one of the leaders of the G7 turned around and tapped him and said, "Come over here for a photo op." They made it. They diced and sliced the video. The right wing extremists and media outlets. They diced and sliced it to make it look almost as if Joe Biden had just sort of temporarily lost it, meandered off. Everybody else is over here. He's off in La La Land, and nothing could have been further from the truth. So, just Spirit is saying, we've got to be really, really vigilant, just like that cheap fake was called out immediately, and people showed the entire clip of who he was talking to, why his attention had been diverted, and then when he was needed, he went back over. But Spirit, the cheap fakes growing, but will there be a counter movement? Yes, magician. So basically, watch out for the tricks, right? Watch out for the cheap fakes. But also, what I'm getting from that is awareness is everything. And I think what's going to happen that's going to backfire, because rather than just, there will be those who'll see something like that, take it at face value and run with it. But I also think what Spirit is saying is there is a growing awareness, and therefore many of us, we will not just take King of Pentacles. This is being solid, being aware, being more responsible with how we are absorbing what we see, the media and stories that we're being fed, especially these little clips and the hangman. Exactly. Look at things from more than one perspective. Take a moment and don't just jump right into what we're being told or what we think we see, right? Get to the, look at it more deeply. Take a moment, pause. So yes, I think that these cheap fakes, they're not going to end. In fact, they're going to ratchet up. Anytime that they have an opportunity to make President Biden look bad, they're going to use it, or make it look like, this whole age factor, memory, awareness, cognizance, all of that. They're going to use that, but it's incumbent upon us, the public, to look a little deeper, make sure. And I do think that Spirit is saying that with that magician, that the media, for all of its faults and little ticks right now that can work our nerves, that there will be that eye towards, is this true? Just because we just saw this, is it true? And let's dig a little bit farther. All right, so that's one thing. Maryland, going on now, what I announced coming into the video, Governor Westmore in Maryland going to issue 175,000 pardons for people who have marijuana convictions still on their record. I don't think this is not impacting those who are imprisoned, but that's another interesting dynamic, because as more and more states have passed the use of recreational marijuana, again, I would imagine, I don't know the specifics, that would include having possession of a certain amount. That would be okay legally, but I do think that in terms of re-enfranchising people who have dealt with those issues, are in the workforce, are trying to rebuild and build their lives, and having this on their record, having, it's an impediment. Again, stops them from getting business loans, being able to vote, applying for certain jobs, etc. So Westmore, is he one, first of all, was Jim Clyburn right? Is he one to keep an eye on? And is this going to be a growing concern where we'll have leaders, excuse me, Five of Swords? That's interesting. Like there's a lot that needs to still be spoken about around that with the Nine of Cups. Five of Swords with the Nine of Cups. I think there's a desire to make sure that people who have made, mistakes or whatever, been penalized in whatever manner, that there is an opportunity for them to get back into society in the way that they really gives them a clean shot. Five of Swords, I think, is the conversations that still need to be had. There are those who will absolutely applaud Governor Westmore's movement out of Maryland, the fact that he's taken this stance. And is that going to be growing, though, Spirit? Will we see more governors in more states go to this? Five of Cups, there's a fear around it. Because it is a volatile issue, but the Three of Pentacles comes as well in juxtaposition to that Five of Cups, you all. So I think there's some struggles around how to go about that, especially in the political climate and especially in some of the more conservative red states. But there is this Three of Pentacles. This is an issue that's not going away. It's an issue that there are going to be more conversations had. And I do think that on the Democratic side of things, this is something that, along with, more progressive issues like abortion, women's rights, DEI, diversity and inclusion, that's going to be on the table as well. The idea that, to what extent can do penalties far outseed, the weight of the quote unquote crime at that time, and giving people an opportunity, a clean shot. But it's taking time. It's not going to be anything. Nine of Swords. Yeah. This is, there are going to be detractors, clearly, that Westmore is taking this action. I do think there will be more discussion around this with the Three of Pentacles. King of Wands, that feels like Westmore and others taking the lead on this issue, being willing to stand, take a stand on this issue and say, listen, we need to give people opportunities. And the Page of Wands, yes, the newness of that, the growing and increasing momentum of having those discussions, but actual pardons or actual laws or executive orders by governors, more of them. No, I don't think that's going to happen right away. So let's hope that more good than nicky stuff comes out of that with Westmore taking this action, because again, he is going to be one to watch. His political future, at least at this time, looks really, really bright. All right, you all, moving on to, Donald Trump in Detroit playing a shell game. Two faces, right? He's a Gemini, and he was definitely working with two faces this weekend in Detroit. He started out, he was invited. Why? A lot of people are asking this question. He was invited to a black church, the 180 Church in Detroit, whose pastor, this Lorenzo Sewell, he said, he was quoted as saying that everyone is welcome here, because people were like, why on earth would you have Donald Trump in a black church in Detroit? We already know how he feels, his track record, his racist track record, etc., right? But we also know he's been doing the sneakers, he's been doing the, in the Bronx, he showed up with the rappers. Like the man has no shame when it comes to, his advancing his cause. So anyway, this pastor says, in his opening remarks, thanks for coming to the hood. Reports say there were only about 200 people there. They weren't necessarily, in love or enthralled. Many of them were probably more curious. They probably had been, as members of this church or church community, they may have been sort of urged, listen, we've got this guy coming, you've got to show up for him. Sadly, there are pictures of brown skinned people out there with these red caps on, with Trump on it. But he goes there. He talks about crime to this 180 church. Trump does. He talks about crime. He talks about, the fact that the city really deserves more. It deserves more economically. And he tries to plant those seeds of division, saying that of course, on the immigration issue, that one of his things is, these people are coming here to America and taking away your jobs, taking away your prosperity, blah, blah, blah. So that was his shine, his spiel to the people in this church in the hood in Detroit. He turns around, he leaves that, goes and he's featured at the, what was this thing? We've heard of it, Turning Point Action. All right. Lara Trump was there, Marjorie Taylor Greene showed up and told everybody who has a gripe against January 6th could go to hell, quote unquote, if what we read and see is to be believed, right? So she tells everybody, go to hell, who has a problem with Jan 6. I mean, what else do we expect? But interestingly enough, she was in Detroit with Trump, etc., right? So she's part of that group. Trump is using her, and if she's willing to be used, which clearly she is, but she's on that gravy train, you all. She's definitely on that gravy train. So anyway, he goes there. Turning Point Action Group, which is an independent group, raises a lot of money. This guy, Charlie Kirk, they've been around for quite a while, but they are growing in influence. Now, apparently they had fallen out with Trump a while back because they were throwing their money behind DeSantis when they thought DeSantis had a shot. They do apparently have a very organized and well-oiled machine for getting people out to vote. Their whole thing is get out to vote, get out to vote, get out to vote. But their platform is, for instance, one of the things that this Charlie Kirk and company have said is, you don't want to get on a plane that has a black pilot. We don't know about their training and their qualifications. Definitely anti-DEI, definitely anti-women's rights. This is an extreme right group. But they've got money and they're an independent group. And Trump's campaign, Lara Trump and this guy Chris, I forget his last name, the co-chair with Lara for the RNC, they realize they need the money and they are willing to, try and forge these relationships with groups that have the money and financing and willing to help get out the vote for Trump. So, but oddly enough, talking about this shell game, right? He leaves the hood where he's saying, I'm here for you. We have certain things in common. We know he's been using that mugshot to say, I've been criminalized now, just like many of you. So now I relate to you in a different way. Left there and went and was among the MAGA faithful, including Marjorie Taylor Greene and company. And, these people who believe anything but what he was selling at that event. So I want to just take a look and see if that's going to make any inroads, because Michigan is going to be a hotbed. It is already a hotbed with, as a swing state or potential swing state because of the whole Gaza, Israel, Palestinian issue. And I just want to see I'm asking Spirit if anybody's buying it, you know what I mean? If this is just something that we're seeing because of the coverage, yeah, he was there, we need to know what he said and what was going on, or if people are buying it. 9 of Pentacles, the economic issue that's what people are listening to. The people who are minorities who are coming to listen to Trump. It is about, but they're not buying it. Thank goodness. 5 of Swords, right? They hear him talking out of both sides of his mouth. They recognize that his messaging is not very clear. While he may be highlighting crime and blah, 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 he's not offering any solutions to that. And the Tower. You won't see me break out into a smile like that too often when I see the Tower. But I like it in this reading because I think there's for some people, they've had enough. This is a breaking point for the idea that they can be manipulated and be lied to and be expected to believe anything that they are told, that their intelligence is being insulted. That's how I see it. And the Lovers, two-faced. They see him as two-faced. I love my tarot, and that's not any shade against the Lovers as an archetype or an energy, but I'm doing this in the context of this reading, which is a lover's ruled by Gemini. So it's Mercury. So they recognize the twins. They recognize that they are aware. Those same people at the 180 church in the hood in Detroit, they're aware that he left there and then went to this turning point action event. So they recognize that it was just, he's two-faced, and he's going to say whatever he thinks is going to hit confirmation the sun. All right. So no, he's not making any inroads. What's interesting though, I do feel Spirit is saying, and I'm going to look at this, I do feel that Biden's ground game, the DNC has got to get on it with that in terms of more grassroots, face-to-face focus groups. And I do feel like Biden is going to find, he was at the G7 summit. He's had so many issues going on globally. So his opportunities to do a lot of grassroots stuff. We know he did it a month or two ago. He did a lot in Pennsylvania, because that's a crucial state for him as well. And it's a state where he knows he's got some inroads there. But I think we're going to see, Spirit, are we going to see more from Joe Biden himself and his camp in terms of more grassroots, getting in front of just people? Five of Swords, they're trying to figure, that Five of Swords has been popping today. There's a need for clearer communication, and there's so much being put out there. Nine of Pentacles, I think he's being, they're planning it. They're in the planning stages. I'm sorry. These are the cities that it would be most important for Biden himself. Is this Biden himself starting to do more grassroots appearances? The moon, yes. But he's also trying to be strategic about it. He recognizes he doesn't want to put, he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. He doesn't want to put himself in front of audiences where he knows that because of the feelings around certain issues, such as the Gaza, the war in Gaza, he's got to be strategic about how he does it, how he makes those inroads. And so for right now, I think there's a lot more planning behind the scenes, and we will see more of that. We will see grassroots speeches, etc. from him. Six of Cups, exactly, because he does have that track record, and he does have meaning Six of Cups, meaning a card of nostalgia, a card where very often we're reflecting on the past and how things could be if we examine them from what has worked in the past. And Joe Biden, that's where his experience comes in. That's where his decades of knowledge comes in. I think he is going to get out there, but he's also trying to, they've got to be very, very careful about where they do it. Two of Swords, exactly. There's the decision that needs to be made. There's the homework that needs to be done by the different offices, the different Democratic offices in cities across the nation, where they can really get a grasp of, check the temperature and decide where exactly is it most beneficial for Biden to come and Biden's surrogates to come. I know that we're going to see more Ten of Swords, because there is that concern that they don't do more harm than good. They've got to make sure that when he goes before these crowds, there's Queen of Pentacles. That's Kamala. We will see probably more of Kamala Harris doing the grassroots outreach and speeches than Biden. But I do believe that Biden will do them. It's just going to perhaps be a little more sporadic, and there's got to be a lot of homework, boots on the ground, homework done ahead of time to make sure that he's in places that make sense. Unlike, so that he doesn't come across, say, like Trump at this 180 church, where you're already like, really, you expect us to believe any of that, right? So he's not going to do that. He's an earnest person, President Biden. He's earnest, and he wants to make sure that when he does this, that even if he takes the heat, and we've seen him do it, he's done it in front of Congress, right? He's okay with taking the heat, but he also wants to be smart about those, putting himself in front of those who are genuinely willing to listen. And because when he does it, he's going to have Page of Swords. I knew it was coming. New information, a willingness to seriously have conversations around topics and issues that are important, not just selling points, but around, something more meaningful and more substantive. And so that takes a little more planning. But we're going to see Joe Biden having, moving more along those grassroots lines. And we're definitely going to see Kamala Harris do more of that as well. I'm also feeling we're going to hear more from people like Hakeem Jeffries and Crockett and many other leaders, not just around racial lines, but certainly as it relates to perceived struggles that President Biden is having with people of color. We're going to see more mobilization with congressional leaders, etc., who have that respect, who have that rep, and can move in many grassroots circles in ways that will be beneficial to the Biden campaign. All right, and finally, this partisan divide. Again, I look it up. Just if you Google partisan divide, New York Times, you'll find this article. Really interesting. These rural-urban exchanges. They said that they were formed also in part because of what they're calling the exhausted majority. The idea that the majority of Americans truly are exhausted with the political climate, everything that comes out in the media, how this has gone on now really deeply over the past year, ever since many of these cases started being brought against Donald Trump and he announced his run, etc. So exhausted, they said, like, estimated 65% of the voting populace is exhausted by the political vibe these days. But these exchanges, these opportunities to get people together, and again, it doesn't have to be an overtly political theme to what brings them together. It's more about, for instance, one of the examples they gave was in Kentucky, which is the basis of this article in the New York Times, in this rural area of Kentucky, right? How red can you get? But there was a black, I want to say he was an academic, maybe at one of the colleges, a black guy who was doing some studies into what was is a burial ground, a slave burial ground, and there was a white woman who knew about that land. Who, I'm not sure if she owned the land or her family had, but she had some ties to the land, and so they began this dialogue together and started talking about ways to preserve this land, to make increase awareness around it. And they both, while they didn't know one another and perhaps had a certain level of not being comfortable with one another, but this issue was important to both of them, and that issue is what has brought them together now, and they're apparently working on that. So, Spirit, will we see more of these rural urban exchanges in the next coming months leading up to the election? Will more cities and states begin to have and foster these Ace of Pentacles? Y'all know how, if you're with me, you've been with me, you know how I feel about my aces. My aces are yes. And this is an Ace of Pentacles, meaning people, happening, tangible, see it, it's going on. Yes, we're going to see a spread of that. And I also think that could be a part of this grassroots effort with the Dems, that they're going to have these grassroots conversations, not necessarily just along party lines. Thank you, Spirit. It won't necessarily just be along party lines, because they want to appeal to independent voters. They want to appeal to more traditional Republican voters, even those who absolutely this idea of voting for a convicted felon is not going to fly. So yes, there will be more of these exchanges. King of Swords. This is not, I get King of Cups usually for Biden. This is not President Biden, but I think this must be a higher up in the DNC. And perhaps even some of these congressional leaders that we've been talking about. But yes, they know they know how effective that can be. Six of Pentacles, that card of give and take, that card of, I'm listening, you're talking, now you talk and I listen. So there's more of that, and there's more of that again within these divergent communities. But it's not going to be a political event per se, because again, people are exhausted, this exhausted majority, and they don't want to turn people off. The idea is to, Four Swords, the idea is to have make it more about community, make it more about understanding, make it more about, I know that Obama still is a very polarizing force, but we do remember what was mostly unifying about him across racial lines, economic lines, etc., was his ability to communicate that message of, at the end of the day, we have more in common than we do differences, right? And that really got a lot of people over the hurdle of being able to support him, especially in the first race in 2008. It was an amazing message that, all of us believing, yes, we can. And the Knight of Cups. Yes, this is something that people want. This part of this exhaustion that so many of us are going through is because, we don't want to sit up here and say, it's us against the MAGA faithful. The MAGA faithful still are parents and grandparents, and they love their communities and their people. The idea that they've been sucked into a way of being, or maybe these recent events since, in the past 8 years since Trump really got on the scene, that it brought out something in them. We know that, and we've heard that for many of these rallies, it's not even that they turn out to listen to Trump or because they're so in love with him, but more so because they love that sense of community. They love being around one another. If that can be broadened out, this partisan divide being brought, I'm done. I can put the deck down. Got me another ace. Okay? First card that I pulled was the Ace of Pentacles. Now I'm pulling the Ace of Swords. Communication, exchange of ideas, taking it from a fresh perspective, hitting a reset, that's what we're going to see a lot more of, I believe, in the coming months. And I get the sense that just as this was done, this New York Times article was done in Kentucky, right? It's going to be in some unexpected places. I'm feeling Texas. I'm feeling Oklahoma. Shame on them with that their state Supreme Court decision about the massacre. Another topic. But I think it's going to be in states where perhaps Arizona and areas where the pool of people to pull from to get to have this exchange is going to be really, really interesting and a really powerful dynamic. So keep our eyes out for a little more of that. All right, you all? All right, done enough for today. Didn't mean to have gone on a half hour. Went on a little longer than I intended. But good to see you. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you real soon.